You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Goku, here with you again with another paper. We're going to go over that concerns African traditional culture and Western education. I see in the chat room there's already been a lot of discussion, so let's go through it. Kevin Kare 42 says, greetings everyone, just learned about blockchain domain. This is a game changer. It cannot be censored, and for a price of $40 you own it forever. Kevin Kare did send me that earlier. I didn't have a chance to respond yet, but I appreciate that. I will check it out after the show. Black Excellence is here saying greetings all, abundance to everyone. NYC Sports Archive says checking in. NYC Beauties says abundance, health, and great relationships to all. Sankofa Knowledge says ready and waiting. Everyday NYC is here saying another excellent show ahead. Kevin Kare posts some articles about blockchain domains that you guys, if you're listening, make sure to pass through on the YouTube channel. Click the links and check out the information. And as he said, there's more information on the Discord. If you're not on the Discord already, you guys should be on the Discord. There's a link in the description of this episode. Click the link, join the Discord, and ask where. Just type the symbol at, and then everyone all together. So at everyone, and just ask, hey, where do I find all these tips and good information? Speaking of good information on the Discord, the brother who was here with us the other night, Simba, I mean, really, he hit me with some information. By the way, we had a great conversation after the Saturday Night Shoot the Breeze. So when we resume Saturday Night Shoot the Breezes, you guys should stick around for the after show. Kevin Kare was there, Revolutionary Matron was there, and Simba Bryant, and good conversation. I think they continued into the early morning, the early morning hours. But he sent me some information, a presentation that he put together that I want him to present on the Discord to everyone. So I want everyone to be in attendance. If you're listening to this and you want to be there, you need to join the Discord ASAP, because I'm going to try to get him to do it in the next couple of days to a week, right? But that said, I also want to remind you guys that this show is a part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. There are other shows in the network I invite you to check out.
This is DAX. You tune into the Harsh Reality Podcast, provided with social commentary on the news affecting our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where Black problems are addressed with Black solutions.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Make sure to check out the Pro-Black Perspective. New episode on Sunday was fire. Check out the Harsh Reality Podcast Presents. He had a lovely guest on. It was a good conversation. You get to learn a little bit more about the host D-Web and his look on life, as well as you get to meet and hear from a lovely young lady as well. So check out those 2 recent episodes, and of course, like, share, and subscribe to content on KWAZ Radio. Also, make sure you guys subscribe to KWAZ Radio's YouTube channel. We're trying to grow that channel as well. Let's get that popping, so that when we start putting out these teaser trailers and stuff like that, you guys will know when they're dropping. Really good stuff coming ahead. I want to thank all of you who are here with me. Thank you for giving me the likes. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell to be notified when I'm on. Kevin Carre says they were on Discord till 3 a.m. Kevin Carre 42 also says HCMC and FTPM made some gains today. Yeah, they made some. One of them made gains yesterday, and I didn't check it today, so I'm glad to hear that. He goes on to say, get them while they are cheap. The same we said about Dogecoins before their spike. Get on the Charles Schwab app. Yeah, you can get on the Charles Schwab app. You can get on Ameritrade app. You cannot get them on Robinhood. That's the problem I have with Robinhood app. Robinhood only carries certain. I mean, they carry a lot of stocks and stuff, but only certain things they carry, and there's a bit of a problem in that way. I would prefer to be able to do all my transactions in one place, But that said, thank you guys for being here. Let's get into the paper. All right. So this title is African Traditional Culture and Western Education. It's a relatively short paper written by Chike Onwuachi, Associate Professor, Department of Sociology and Anthropology from Fisk University. So it starts off like this. African problems and events occupy positions of prominence in the horizon of world affairs today. Modern Africa has emerged with exaggerated speed from her stages of primitivity into the embrace of modern times. No longer is Africa to be described as the Dark Continent. From times past, cultural variations and conditions of diversity have existed in Africa. It was within the continent of Africa that the great pharaohs of Egypt lived in decadent splendor, while Europe, as we know it, wallowed in primitivity and dark ages. It was within the territorial boundaries of Africa that some of the key elements of the present Western civilization were developed. Paradoxically, Africa still maintains some of the most traditional and primitive cultures. The impact of Western civilization on Africa has created many problems and changes. Among these are the problems of cultural adaptation and the incorporation of Western laws and customs into existing tribal ones. There are also the problems of urbanization, which have brought about a radical transformation of the character of African social life. There is also the issue of detribalization, which processually has created conditions under which the individual African natives were deprived of cultural constraints to which they were traditionally attached. Let us for a moment here look at the term culture. In the anthropological usage, every people and every society do have culture. This is the sum total of the integrated learned behavior patterns characteristic of members of a society. It is the sum total of a people's customary way of doing things. All right. This will include all aspects of their life, their social organization, economic patterns, socially standardized techniques of doing things, and feelings shared by members of the society. So I'll pause here for a second and say this. I never understood why folks, generally speaking and specifically, why folks feel this need to tell black folks anywhere that they don't have a culture. I didn't particularly like it when folks said folks from the Bahamas don't have a culture, which is absolute nonsense. And I cringe every time I hear people say Black Americans don't have a culture. They don't have your culture, but they have a culture of their own. And to say that a group doesn't have a culture, it's a roundabout way of saying that you're better than them. And this is where I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it here. I'm gonna say it loudly. This is where diasporans have to do better. So you come from the continent and you don't see something deliberately and brazenly African, so you say, well, they don't have a culture. It's just nonsense, right? It's nonsense. If you take a moment, get off your high horse and just take a moment and look at these people and listen to their rhythms and look at their patterns, you'll clearly see, because the European American recognizes these people as being African. And a lot of that kind of stuff is what drives that wedge that we now got to deal with, that we got to deal with the grifters who are capitalizing on this idea. No wonder Black Americans prefer to be some kind of Indian as opposed to being African. At least the Indians don't tell them they don't have a culture, or the so-called Native Americans don't tell them no shit like that. Stop doing it. It's the biggest division that you will see, right? And I brought up the Bahamas for a second. Let me finish that thought, including the Bahamas for a second. The reason why a lot of these other folks say that to the Bahamas is because of our proximity to the States. And that's why a lot of folks tell Black Americans that, because of their proximity of being a population within this white nation. They tell them that you have nothing, you are nothing, you have no culture, right? Because, say, the Bahamas is closer to the U.S. and for whatever reasons, their dollar isn't much different, right? It's not like some other places where the money is 100 to 1 and all that old shit. All of a sudden, we ain't got no culture. You got to stop that type of stuff. It's very clear what culture is and what it isn't. You see that last line? And feelings shared by members of the society. How are you going to tell me I don't have a culture? How are you going to tell Black Americans they don't have a culture just because you don't see, your shit right up front is stupid. You got to stop it. You got to stop it. Because, and let me say this last thing before I move on. Listen, I watch YouTube videos out of the continent, and most of you folks out of the continent, you Africans out of the continent, are trying to be like the Black American. So then don't come here and then tell the people they don't have a culture. You're weaponizing the distance and between us. And so, of course, they're going to, especially once they get one or two charismatic grifters in their ranks, they're gonna go a different way. The job is to unite, not tear apart. To continue, an important aspect of culture is that it is learned and not biologically inherited. So when you continental Africans and some of you Caribbeans too, when you guys come here and you're all up in the hip hop and all this stuff, don't tell the people they don't have a culture. To continue, it is passed on from one generation to the next. It constitutes a social heritage of every new generation. In every society, each person is shaped by the culture in which he is raised, so that what he does, the way he thinks, feels, and even behaves, will greatly depend upon the culture. So let me just read that little section in there again. It constitutes the social heritage of every new generation. In every society, each person is shaped by the culture in which he is raised, so that what he does, the way he thinks, feels, and even behaves will greatly depend upon the culture. Instead of telling folks they don't have a culture, How about try to integrate them into a Pan-African culture? That is, a culture that studies, that looks at, that accepts cultures and aspects of black folks within and throughout the diaspora. Stop the bullshit. This stuff ain't that hard to do. This stuff ain't hard to do. I continue. Central within any culture is that which we call value. This is the implicit or explicit socially standardized concept of what is desirable or undesirable in the culture. In the pursuit of the values of his culture, the individual gives meaning to his life. And this goes back to everything I've been saying in my commentary here. You're going to look at a person and tell them they have no value, and that this individual basically has no meaning to his life? How dare you? And then you wonder why we can't get along. Cut the nonsense out. Just as one goes from one culture to another, one sees different ideals and desires clearly dominating the scene. These ideals act as goals. They serve as the lodestar by which cultural behaviors are channeled through acceptable grooves. In any cultural contact situation, the values of the cultures in contact do invariably change considerably, resulting in somewhat new cultures. The new cultures or ways of life must, however, have a realistic relation to the ongoing patterns of existence if they are to be meaningful and beneficial. So you don't come in and tell folks, you don't come in to the location that these people have lived for the last couple hundred years and tell them they have no culture, right? And then try to force upon them something that's clearly, culturally relevant to you, right? The best way to go about it is to find the things that is the cultural bridge between you and these folks and build upon it. Build upon it. When you do it that way, it will all be meaningful and beneficial to everyone involved. In other words, the new cultural values must be properly woven into the existing fabrics of the culture. You want to re-Africanize African Americans? You take your time and you take your time and you don't force anything on anyone, but show them the similarities. Show them that there's more similarities than differences. Don't just tell them that, right? Don't just tell them that. In the chat room, I see there's some activity. What's going on? Kevin Carre says, culture vultures say that. If we did not have culture, these outsiders would not be stealing us, right? Yeah, and that's the other problem too. So you got the problem with other diasporans, right, who want to tell Africans in America that they have no culture, and then they got to deal with also the European, the real, culture vulture, right, who's stealing their shit and profiting off of it while these guys are suffering and come on. Revolutionary Matron is here, y'all, saying greetings. This lie is based in psychological warfare. They shit on us and we shit on each other. It is utter nonsense. I agree. NYC Beauty says outsiders steal our essence. NYC Sports Archive says the opportunists can go kick rocks, right? Sankofa Knowledge says, I just ignore the hate. They want what we have. We don't want, but don't want the black part. Kevin Carey says, black first and always enough is enough. We have to stop feeling bad for being excellent. Everybody else can bow down. Everyday NYC1 says effing outrageous. NYC Sports Archive says pure jealousy. We have to believe the opposite of what they say. These people talk with a forked tongue. Jerry Wallace is here, y'all, saying hello all. Right? But I want to be clear. We have the obvious problem with the obvious culture vulture, which is the European. But we also have a diasporan problem where folks will come to the States and you're telling black folks in the States they have no culture. That's you're begging for us not to be united when you do stuff like that. That's a huge insult. Especially when everything on the continent is leaning towards what Africans in America have created here. You go listen to music coming out of Africa right now and tell me what you hear. Tell me if you don't hear hip-hop influence in a lot of that music right now. So you can't tell the folks that. Come with open arms, humble yourself, and say to the folks, you know what? I don't know if y'all know this, but this rhythmic pattern that y'all have in hip hop, this is from your ancestors from Africa, and this is how people will start to re-embrace and embrace their African origin. In every society, primitive or civilized, every child is born endowed with the innate qualities of mind and body. Through the process of socialization, the child acquires the cultural modes of behavior. Among these processes are the culturally adaptive processes of education. These processes of education are usually carried on in primitive or simple societies by the family, by the playgroup, through initiation ceremonies, through some forms of apprenticeship, and through the daily process of existence. In the more complex societies, the processes of education become synonymous with schooling. In this case, the individual goes away from family, playmates, or groups to specialized institutions or school where he gets the fundamentals of general knowledge and skills, and then professional ability. In such societies, the process of school training is not altogether integrated with the family, playgroup, or even with the daily processes of life. I want y'all to pay attention to this sentence right here. I want to read it again. It's really important. In such societies, the process of school training is not altogether integrated with the family, playgroup, or even with the daily processes of life. This is black society right now, worldwide. There's undoubtedly a seeming rift between schematized school experiences and teachings and the quote-unquote direct influence of life and its unregimented pursuits. The indigenous African societies educate their children through the ongoing process of life and their traditional customs and values. Through their traditional tales and myths, the elders teach the children the moral, ethical codes of behaviors and social relationships. Through certain religious rituals and practices, communal attainments of spiritual ideals are established. These spiritual ideals are the foundation for the respect which the indigenous Africans have for their political institutions, the love, respect, and obedience which the children must show to their parents and elders, the strong loyalty to oath, and the restraints from the perpetration of evil within the society. Through some forms of apprenticeship and cultural participation, children acquire the techniques of communication and making a living, as well as those of creative expressions within the culture. These informal techniques, apprenticeships, and the direct participation in the general process of life constitute the pedagogical tools in the indigenous African societies. The impact of Western culture led to the introduction of the regimented, schematized system of Western education known as schooling. Right? So this is where the miseducation comes in. And when you come talking about who doesn't have culture, You're dealing in the miseducation as well. You want to educate? You come and you show them through informal techniques, apprenticeships, direct participation, and things of that nature, right? You come and show folks the connection. You connect the dot. A lot of Africans outside of the diaspora aren't even aware or they're unsure that they're African. Come and show them, right, and teach them how to connect those dots. And together, we teach our children how to solve the problems that we all have across the globe. This is why I keep talking about the curriculum, which I'll be honest, I've been kind of slacking on a little bit. I will be back to it in just a bit, right? And if you want to help with the curriculum, say, hit me a DM on the Discord and say, hey, I want to help. What can I help you with right now? And that will go a long way, right, in getting this thing done. To continue, the school curricula were formulated, fashioned, and relished with Western cultural ideals and values. Very little reference was made to indigenous African social and physical ecology, as well as cultural values and ideals, right? And you gotta hand it to these savages too, that they had the wherewithal to do that with the education. You gotta hand it to them. Because if I had conquered another people, I'm not sure I would have thought to now give them an education that keeps them conquered. Then again, I'm sure they probably learned through trial and error, right? I'm sure they probably, maybe they didn't think about it initially, but they realized certain Africans were still able to kind of put up resistance, and they realized now we can't have them learn about the previous times that they've resisted. We got to change the education. So that could be possibly it. Africa was divided among the various European countries for many years. The divided territories developed and adopted political, economic, and social structures relative to the European countries that ruled them. The British, the French, the Belgians, and the Portuguese all had different colonial policies. The British worked with a political objective that was to advance their colonies and protectorates towards self-government within the British Commonwealth of Nations. I think he's a little heavy-handed in what he said just now. The French colonial policy worked with the remarkable basic philosophy whereby the colonies were regarded potentially as part of France herself. That's an important thing. This basic philosophy of assimilation was not a most desirable one both for the Africans and the Europeans. On the basis of this philosophy, the Africans in the French territories were essentially and almost exclusively educated to cherish French culture as their own, thus making Frenchmen out of the Africans. That's a cold game right there. The Belgians in their territories work with a basic, paternalistic, and condescending political, economic, and social philosophy. If you haven't already, read the book King Leopold's Ghosts. Carl Hezekiah and I actually, when we had the Bitter Medicine Book Club, yes, we had the Bitter Medicine Book Club. Yes, I would like to bring it back, but I would not want to have the responsibility for the book selection and, etc. So if you're out there and you felt like, hey, I've always wanted to, have a book club or start a book club, by all means, you could reach out to me. I'll reach out to Carl Hezekiah. We could restart the book club. But the point is, read if you haven't read the book King Leopold's Ghost, to see what the Belgians did in the Congo, you could definitely tune in to the book review that we did, and you'll get a lot of information on what happened in the Congo. And this description that they give about being paternalistic and condescending, You absolutely see it when you read the book or if you listen to that episode. So you guys go and check that out. Very little was done for the political and social advancement of the Africans. The people had virtually no real share in the government of their country, and very few Africans ever advanced to high school level. In the Portuguese territories, the existing policy of pseudo-assimilation tended to degrade the Africans whom the Portuguese regarded as their social inferiors. As a result of such condescending, repressive, and seemingly paternalistic philosophy, very little was done to educate Africans. Besides the paucity of Western educational facilities, the Africans were compulsorily subjected to many human indignities, which the Portuguese claim will enable the Africans to achieve certain material and cultural standards of existence, which may qualify them for Portuguese citizenship, rather citizenship in their own African native land. Right? So these Portuguese, and you know, there should come a time where the continent together just lands down on Portugal and destroy them. To be honest, there really should become a time where that happens, right? These guys felt that, well, what you went through made you better. I mean, with these various political, economic, and social philosophies, the European powers introduce and maintain educational systems with curricula that have European cultural objectives rather than African. In time, of course, these educational systems became subtle and indirect tools for the implementation of the long-term political and economic objectives of the Europeans. So clearly, if you haven't heard me talk about education and curricula before, hear it now, right? The curriculum that our children are getting in the so-called public school system has a European objective, not an African one, not a black one, nothing in between. Will you continue with that? Again, I'm a realist. I acknowledge not everyone will be able to send their kids out to a African-centered school or what have you. But that doesn't mean that we can't have learning going on in our homes, an African-centered one or a Pan-African-centered one at that, right? We have to make it happen. These folks ain't gonna do it for us, right? In the chat room, Kevin Carre 42 says, as I said Saturday, we have to consolidate, reorganize, and deprogram. No outsiders allowed. Absolutely. Revolutionary Matron says they are a family we need to be a family too. Black first. Black Excellence says we need each other. We need to get our kids out of these Western schools and into an African based. Revolutionary Matron says she's being censored. Yeah, you can expect that here. You can expect that here on YouTube, especially with channels like this, right? Revolution Matron says my Discord comments did not come up. I didn't see comments on Discord from you. NYC Sports Archive says say it loud, black first, black always. Black Excellence says black first. Sankofa Knowledge says black first. Everyday NYC says the same. Black Excellence says we have to leave the Prussian school system. It was never good for us in the first place. Absolutely. Revolution Matron says meritorious manumission in Portugal. This should not work today, but it still works because we have been taught to hate ourselves, right? She says meritorious manumission is the global scheme, right? Also, Kevin K says to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Help this channel grow. He says to me, we do not need everyone. I get it. I get it. But when it comes to black, we need to be more cordial with each other. And that comes through our education. That comes through showing our similarities far outweigh any differences we have. And most likely the differences we have comes from our enemy. So we shouldn't glorify in our differences, because that, I could bet most of that comes from our enemy. We need to be glorified in what we've been able to retain on both sides of the pond. In the continent, here in the States, in the Caribbean, the UK, wherever there's black folks, we need to celebrate what we've been able to keep. All right. By the way, Revolutionary Matron mentioned the meritorious manumission. A lot of people don't know, might not know what that is, but there was a time meritorious manumission was granted to a slave who distinguished himself by saving the life of a white master or his property, or by inventing something that a white slave master could make a profit from, or snitching on a slave rebellion, right? It was just another tactic of division. And some of our folks tend to willingly accept this meritorious manumission. When continental Africans come and start talking about who doesn't have a culture and who's not African and all, oh, that's not, that's not African, this, that, and the other. That's what you sellouts are doing right there, right? You're only helping white folks to keep down black folks, right? And by othering black folks, celebrate what's the same or similar, not what's different. The differences are here due to what our enemy has done to us. So stop the bullshit, right? Let me continue with the paper. I want to thank all of you who are here. Make sure you guys hit the like button. We have more viewers than likes right now. Make sure hit the like. It's important. I can't stress that enough, especially for small channels. It's important that you guys hit the like button as well as share and subscribe, but the like button is super important. During the initial onslaught of Western education on Africa, two groups played remarkable roles. They were the self-appointed benevolent educators and missionaries, and the divisive, destructive elements such as the slave traders and exploiters who came only to ravage and exploit Africa of her natural and human resources. These exploiters and predatory elements, with their overwhelming spirit of paternalism and attitudes of condescension, were to form the main core of those Europeans who worked to sabotage the surging spirit of African nationalism and liberation movements. For this group, the emerging African nations and personality will have a fitting reward in due time. To the missionaries and the benevolent educators, Africans owe some debt of gratitude. I call bullshit on this, but okay. But as much as the Africans are forever grateful to these Christian missionaries and benevolent educators, we cannot help but recall some of their short-sightedness. The condescending attitudes and ethnocentric paternalism of some missionaries and many white men who claim to be Christians were certainly incompatible with the basic tenets of Christianity. Economic exploitation, racial discrimination and prejudice, religious bigotry, and atrocious social injustices are definitely inconsistent with basic Christian ideology. Yet many of the Christian Europeans did very little to decry these evils which the Christian Europeans perpetuated on the Africans. Furthermore, the type of Christianity taught the Africans was one that is patterned, formulated, and relished in the system of thought that is very characteristic of Europe and very incompatible with the indigenous African religious concepts and practices. Again, this, I'm not gonna stick on this point, but this leads me to wonder, why would you accept this en masse? And it's not just Christianity, but it's Islam as well. or Judaism. It's all the Abrahamic religion. Why would you accept this in mass? And why would you speak of these folks who do this as benevolent? How did he put it before? He said that they were, how do you describe it? Benevolent educators, right? Come on. They can't be that, and then after you write this shit afterwards. Obviously, when the missionaries and other Christian Europeans remained disinclined to openly challenge and denounce the atrocities perpetrated by their fellow countrymen in the name of Christianity, the Africans were shocked and disillusioned. The ultimate reflection is that if Christianity does not govern the actions of its carriers, then it has nothing much to offer the Africans, whose indigenous religious beliefs and practices are inseparable from their cultural norms of behavior and existence. In the indigenous African societies, religious beliefs and practices teach reverence for the spiritual life, respect for authoritative government, obedience, love and regard for older people, fidelity for friendship, and genuine hospitality to strangers. Well, that last one got us messed up, didn't it? Right? That hospitality part. In times of crisis, the indigenous religious beliefs become the ultimate means of vindication, denunciation of injustice and punishment. Yet we continually find many missionaries who consider their cultural values and social institutions better and above those of the Africans, right? That's the case. Why do you fuck with it? In the chat room, you got KW Don 7 in the room. KW Don 7 says, Urugu doesn't believe in or practice any religion except for domination. And that to me is so clear. It is so clear. And you know, I said I wasn't going to stick on this, but I'm going to say this. Don't be so afraid of death and the afterlife, or what is not afterlife, right? Don't be so afraid of it that you will accept any bullshit, right? Once it's a pacifier. What's the thing Christians always talk about all the time? The comforter. The comforter. Like, you guys are so afraid of death that you will comfort yourself with bullshit in life. And this is how we lose. This is how we lose. How dare we be so afraid that we sit up here and we go to church on a Sunday all day sometimes, right? And worse yet, here's the worst part of it. You take your cowardice in this religion, this comforter. You take your cowardice and you pull your children and you pull your grandchildren and you pull generations of our people into the nonsense. It is clear as day if you sit down and just take a cursory look. I'm not even talking about do deep research, just a cursory look. And you will see that these folks don't really practice no goddamn religion. And the ones who do are poor like us, or poorer than us. They're castaway folks. If you don't see that, damn, like, this shit is, and I see I'm losing viewers as I speak, and that's fine. It's fine. If that's what it is, that's what it is. I'm not afraid like you, so I'm going to speak the truth. A lot of folks don't like to hear the truth about this religious shit, and so they sign out. And so be it, go and sign out. I grew up in that shit, and I know it ain't. I know it ain't have nothing to do with us. I know it's about your fear of dying. It's your fear of death. Listen, we all gotta go. All of us have to go. And we ain't got no choice in it. Live your best life, be good to others, but be great towards your people. And stop listening to nonsense just to make yourself feel confident in this world. It's nonsense. You want to listen to some stuff that uplifts you? Go and listen to Dr. John Henrik Clarke. Go and read you some Marcus Garvey, who, by the way, was also a Christian. Which is my one knock against him, because he was supposed to be able to see the nonsense too. Kevin Carey says religion is a destructive force that set back the Africans. Absolutely. Revolutionary Matron says, Dr. Clarke, like I just mentioned, says, if it's not an instrument of your liberation, throw it out. Revolutionary Matron also says religion plays on your fear of death while popularizing a death cult. I refuse to pass it on to my child. And that's what that is. Half the shit doesn't even make sense anymore. You can tell it was written in a certain time. A lake of fire. Like, dude, a lake of fire? KW Don 7 says white nationalism is on a rampage. Just had truck attack in which 5 Pakistani was struck, killing 4 in London. 4 in London, Ontario. I'm sorry to hear that, but let's keep it real. Pakistanis ain't much better, right? Stop letting your fear of death initiate you deeper and deeper, and your children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, into this death cult. Time to get educated. It's time to act like you have some knowledge now. Education is greater than an African-centered education is greater than any books called, any chapters of a book called Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I'm telling you that now. I know there's some of you who might be pulling your hair out listening to this, because again, I see the numbers they drop and they come back up and they dip. Don't be mad at me. Be mad at the facts. To continue, one of the conditions usually given before an African can receive baptism is the assumption of a European name. Even though the meaning of the name is unknown and insignificant to the Africans. Didn't I just read a paper that talked a little bit about this? In fact, it talks a lot about that. You guys will go and take on, and I'm looking right at you guys on the continent itself. You guys will go take on some name that means like that means something like gatekeeper and people smasher and all kind of shit like that, right? And don't even bother to understand the names that you're taking up. And your church, the church that you're affiliating yourself with, is pushing you down that path. At least with the Ethiopian Coptic Church, at least you take on an Ethiopian name. I mean, for fuck's sake. You guys become all kinds of David and Richard and all this old shit. I mean, come on. Traditional African names, which have deep spiritual meaning, were often rejected in favor of biblical or European names. For instance, names like Chukwuma, Okonkwo, Adeteyo, Kwame, Azu Wabuki, Abeyomi, Mofuta, Mothoni, Chukwemeka. You know, there's a character. It's funny. There's a character on this show that I hate to see it because it's about a black woman. It's about a black African woman getting with a white boy. I forget the name of it now. But there's a character on the show named Chukwemeka. All right, so now I'm getting to see the spelling of that name, Chukwemeka. Do you guys know what show I'm talking about? You could post a name in the chat if you do. But one of the characters has the same African name, Chukwemeka. Chukwemeka, which are meaningful and significant to the Africans, are rejected in favor of James, Andrew, Patrick, George, John, Timothy, David, Vincent, Isaac, Samson, Priscilla, etc., etc. Sometimes it is even worse. Someone named Uche Chukwuka, meaning God's will is the best or supreme, became overnight through baptism Emmanuel Godwin Kingsley. God damn. On one case where an African was transformed from Chukwuka Uzo Dinma into David Jeremiah Jackson. The whole beautiful, significant, and meaningful African names become lost forever. And again, this is why, and you know, maybe it's a good thing I don't write papers like this. This is why I don't care for some authors sometimes. You can't say that these missionaries and whatnot were well-meaning and we owe them some gratitude and then come back and write this stuff. Do you guys agree with me on that or no? How can we say these folks were well-meaning and then we have a couple of paragraphs showing the negative impact that these folks had on us? You guys see what I'm saying? Type 1 in the chat if you get where I'm coming from. Right? You know, let me pause here for a station ID break. I'll be back on the other side.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
This is DAX. You tune into the Harsh Reality Podcast, providing you with social commentary on the news affecting our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the pro-black perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Yes, indeed. Make sure you guys check out those shows. Like I said earlier, on Sunday, Pro Black Perspective dropped a new episode, real good one. I saw Revolutionary Matron in the chat room. Also, Sunday night, I think it was, Harsh Reality Podcast dropped another interview episode. So you guys check those out as soon as you can. All right, make sure you like and subscribe and click the bell for the KWAZ Radio YouTube channel. All right. In the chat room, Kevin Curry 42 says missionaries can go burn. Revolutionary Matron said Mother Teresa deliberately kept people impoverished. Black first. She relished in keeping them poor. I'm supposed to believe in these people. I'm supposed to give them good reviews, knowing all this stuff that this author has since printed, since saying that they were basically saying that they were well-meaning and we owed them a debt of gratitude. That sounds like a Christian as well. That sounds like thank you for slavery now, because if it wasn't for slavery, I wouldn't have a chance to know Jesus. I would be in Africa worshiping a tree, which is nonsense, right? Well, at least you could see the tree. It is in fact very obvious that the future of Christianity in Africa is rather precarious if the existing Western attitudes of cultural condensation and paternalism continue with Christian evangelism. When I grew up, a big evangelist guy on TV, he's from my hometown too. He died a couple years ago in a plane crash, him and his wife and a few other close aides, I guess. A guy named Miles Monroe. And Miles Monroe and them used to have what's the white boy name? He died now too. His son was trying to take his space. Could they have the same name, but not Oral Roberts, the other one. I can't remember his name. Damn. You guys might know who I'm talking about. The white TV evangelist in the States here. Anyway, Miles Monroe and them would have him come around. And if you look at, if you just take a step back and just look at the scene, it's like a child, it's like a small black child hugging white daddy type stuff. It is so cringeworthy. Even as a kid, I looked at it and I was like, this don't look right. This don't look right. But when they have this guy come, his name is Graham something, I think. Right? It just doesn't look right. But when you go and you do your work, when you do your research, right? You clearly see that the Western attitude is one of condensation and paternalism. And you see that heavy in Christian evangelism. Right? So when these guys come through, you got Billy Graham. Thank you, Revolutionary Matron. Billy Graham. This fucker here. Right? May he rest in peace. Right? When you see Billy Graham and them come around, you see these black televangelists hugging him up and they like, just bad. It's not good. It's just not good. And you know, that alone should wake some people up. That feeling, like to me, to be a religious person, you have to have zero race pride. Because if you had any race pride and you looked at that shit that I looked at, you'd be like, no way. No way. You know? By the way, because I know I'm getting close to the end of this paper. Actually, let me finish the paper and I'll say, actually I'll say it now. I've been thinking about something, especially after I have those Discord conversations after a show. And there's something I gotta share with you guys. It's a thought I have that I gotta share with you guys, that what we need to what's the way they say it these days? Normalize. What we need to normalize in black society now is anytime we greet each other, right? Anytime we come around, we greet each other, we must be able to provide some project we're working on, some research for a project that we want to do. I think that's the thing that we must do. And that's the thing I'd like to encourage on the Discord, especially. It starts at home, right? The Discord is our shared home. That's something I would like you guys to think of. Like, I know Revolutionary Matron has a show coming. I know Kevin Carey 42 has a book coming, right? You know, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something I'd like to really make a thing, right? Like when I hit up KW Dawn 7, I like KW Dawn 7. I'm not picking on KW Dawn. I'm just saying. I like KW Dawn 7 to say, hey, man, you know, yeah, I'm cool, man. I've just been working on this project. Oh, what's the project about? You know, and by doing that, we will then have the opportunities to say, hey, I like that project you're working on, man. I have experience in X, Y, and Z. when you get to a certain place, I'll come and I'll help you to get certain things done. And I think that's what we got to be on as a people. Not just us on the Discord, but I think as a people in general, that's what we got to really be on. What project are you working on? What research to what end you're working on? And we should all have it. It's time to stop being spectators, and we got to start getting in the game a little bit more. And that goes for me too, right? You got to get in the game a little bit more. One of the best conversations I've had this year was after the Saturday Shoot the Breeze episode with, as I mentioned, Revolutionary Matron, Kevin Curry 42, and Simba Bryant. And at the time of the discussion, I know he had sent me some stuff, but when I looked at it, I think it was yesterday. Sunday or Monday, I can't remember. When I looked at it and I looked at the work he put into this presentation that he has, I'm like, yo, you've got to present that to folks. You've got to present that to people on the Discord, and let's see if we can get a committee of people who are willing to do their part and help. That's what we got to do. For those people who are asleep and are holding on to their sleep, let them hold on to that, man. We gotta really, the ones of us who are awake, we got a lot of work to do, because we gotta do work essentially for the people who ain't doing work themselves. But the beauty of it is that we'll all be together doing this work, and we'll have the opportunity to help one another and pull each other up to get the work done. Right? That's what we got to do. Right? So you guys on the Discord, let me know. I'm thinking Friday night, perhaps, if Simba Bryant is available. Right? In fact, I'll base it on his availability, of course. But he should present that. He should present his work, and I'm telling you, great stuff. He should present that to the Discord. I hope you guys will be down for it when it comes up. All right. To continue, if Christianity is to survive in Africa, it has to be the type of Christianity strictly taught by Christ. I mean, there isn't even real evidence that there was a Christ. And whenever you bring that up to Christians, I notice that the next thing they jump to is, oh, well, you know, there was like 16 different Christs. There were not 16 different Christs. So why should and why would I want Christianity to survive in Africa, knowing what Christianity has done to Africa? But this is one, I could bet this Negro is a Christian himself. And you can't give up your comforter. I mean, that should tell you guys something too. The biggest name in that whole biblical tale, they refer to him as the comforter, and that's what he is. And y'all guys can't give up that comforter. In the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. Right? That comes from the Bible. There's also a line in a Bob Marley song. But it's a reality. You have all this knowledge of the ill effects of Christianity, but you're still talking about if Christianity is to survive. We should want to destroy it. It must be a Christianity that is devoid of bigotry and sectarianism. Good luck. Christianity that transcends nationality and cultural ethnocentrism. Good luck. One of your 16 saviors there said he didn't come to save certain people. He came to save his own people. Good luck. Christianity that holds with tenacity the charity that Christ so emphatically preached, the love of our neighbors as ourselves. Which neighbors? We live in segregated societies, so which neighbors are we to love? Until these fools push to integrate. Christianity that most strongly qualify our entire social, political, and economic ideals and practices. Good luck. In fact, the Africans cannot comprehend a religion ideology that comes with such existing conflicts as those dichotomizing between white and black, between Catholics and Protestants, between Baptists and the Methodists, the Unitarians, the Presbyterians, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Church of God in Christ, between the Northern Baptists and the Southern Baptists, between the First Baptists, Central Baptists, the Third Baptists, between the Bethlehem Methodists, the Antioch Methodists, the African Methodists. I mean, that tells you all you need to know right there. I remember in college, and Kevin Carre should remember this group too. There was a Christian group in college that said if you weren't in their cult, and they avoided the term cult at all costs, if you weren't a part of their cult, you weren't Christian. And I remember asking this Spanish kid with a ponytail, do you remember that guy, Kevin Carre? I remember asking this asshole, like, so you're telling me a Catholic to you guys is unchristian? He said, yeah. Anglican, unchristian. All these different groups, 7-day and all this shit, he said no. But I'm supposed to believe in this shit? And you talking about a Christianity without sectarianism? Oh, come on, man. Come on, come off that. These conflicts among those who come to teach and preach Christianity cannot definitely help the Africans achieve unity in their indigenous cultural milieu. They can only create frustration and spiritual division among the Africans. This is clearly a Christian author, right? Because the fix for this, the fix for Christianity and the problems that he's listing here, is to practice your African traditional religion. That's the fix. In the chat room, Revolutionary Matron says they also assert the Jewish perspective and his existence. Kevin Carre says these people are talking about loving your neighbor, but rail against critical race theory. All right? Kevin Carre also says Campus Advance. Yeah, that was the name of the group. They were very creepy. Campus Advance. I suspected them to be a sex cult as well. Right? He said this group fits in perfect with Jim Jones and his poison Kool-Aid. And Africans, this author and all, Africans are still out here trying to pour some goddamn poisons. I just watched everyone who drank the shit drop dead, right? But we still want to extol the virtues of Jim Jones and his belief system. Oh, while we at it, pour my glass, a cool glass of Kool-Aid too. It's nonsense. It's stupid. But we cling to this stuff because we need some comforter. We're so afraid of death at this point. I think that right there is really the big reason why Africans haven't really organized. And because if you organize and come together to do the work, you have work to do. And you know what a part of that work to do means. Wink, wink. You're afraid to do it. In our modern Africa, it is very obvious that the task of education is indeed a formidable one. Many Africans of today exist in two worlds and seem to belong fully and completely to neither. For a long time, Western education emphasized Western cultural values and expectations at the expense of African cultural traditions. Most of what the schools taught were based on Western spiritual and moral values, which made such school systems in the African cultural milieu a seeming deviation from true educational objectivity. We feel that for it to be objective, the process of education must be so channeled as to enable the individual to develop deep moral values, proper social attitudes, necessary skills and ideas in terms of the highest cultural objectivity of the society. within the perspectives of the ideology of Pan-Africanism, it must be emphasized that Western education in Africa must be structured and geared for objective adaptation within the African cultural environment. Such education must eliminate the dichotomy between reality and expectations in African cultural milieu. It must also take into consideration the entire African traditional structure and the individual modal personality. And that's something for us to keep in mind as we work on curriculum. Can you guys hear me? You might have to refresh. It looks like they're now chopping up the stream a little bit. So if you don't hear me, refresh. You should hear me. Let me know if you guys can hear me so I can stop talking about it. Right? Let me know if you can hear me so I can stop talking about refreshing. Right? But let's try to get through this paper. It looks like I'm back. We are not here saying that the African must be educated solely in line with his traditional customs and patterns of existence. So this author or authors, these are punks. Right? These are punks. Because I'm saying that the African must be educated solely in line with his traditional customs and patterns of existence. You know why I say that? And why these guys probably say something different? Is because these guys are thinking about being able to integrate into white society and to having the knowledge necessary to navigate that integration. I don't care about that. The way I look at life is I live in a predominantly black neighborhood. I come from a predominantly black country, right? Both on my mother and father's side, right? And so the way I look at it is that I can live in a completely black world without any of these other folks. These guys are still trying to navigate through white society, right? These guys are still trying to navigate through white society. And so they will say this utter nonsense that they're saying. By the way, Black Excellence says, ScrewTube cannot stand the truth. Revolutionary Matron says, yes, I can hear you. So does Kevin Carre. I want to say something to y'all who are still here with me. I can see the concurrent viewers, and I can see the numbers have dropped. Let me tell y'all, sometimes it's not YouTube alone that's on the bullshit. Sometimes it's people listening who hate to hear some true shit, who then go and tell YouTube to strike the channel or what have you. Always remember that there are people, especially when we talk about this religious stuff and this comforter stuff, there are people who are uncomfortable with the truth about that stuff, and they will report you to YouTube themselves. Okay, thankfully I'm at the very close end to this paper, right? So they won't have much more opportunity to screw me tonight. To continue, rather we say that the African, because of his contact with the Western world, needs a type of education that takes into consideration his indigenous cultural traditions, as well as the realities of Western cultural patterns and ideology. This is a punk right here. This guy is beaten already, right? This guy is defeated already, because this guy thinks that, well, the West is winning. Western cultural patterns and ideologies are dominant. They're winning. We can't beat them, so we got to join them. And so if we're going to join them, we got to understand it. We got to understand these cultural patterns and ideologies. And yeah, we should learn some African shit too. That's basically how I see this author right now. It is not merely a dreamed optimism when we state here that in spite of all the misguided Western cultural impositions, many of the African traditional customs and institutions will survive the impact of Western civilization. These surviving cultural traditions will form the bulwark of the new syncretized cultural pattern presently emerging in Africa. To appreciate and adequately cope with the demands of the new cultural pattern, The educated African must be taught in such a way that he will not be unmindful of his indigenous cultural traditions and heritage. He must be taught to understand the meaning, values, and the significance of the indigenous cultural traditions and customs. Such an educational process will help instill in the African a sense of the new cultural pattern that is fast becoming the vogue in our contemporary Africa. That's the end of the paper. About the end of that paper, I will say, don't be afraid to be African. The point that we're working towards is a black world. They could work on their white world if they want to. We're working on our black world. A world where when we get our education, we're not out here begging other folks for a job. I mean, imagine that. Imagine how that feel. I mean, I always felt like a damn fool dressing up in suits and ties to go talk to these white folks and have to soften my tone or my image or whatever to be able to get a job. And by the way, one of the reasons why black folks don't move around in jobs like our contemporary white folks do, because contemporary white folks, especially in the last, say, 20 years, these fuckers jump from job to job for 1,000K more. They don't care about being on a job for 3 months. If it's 1,000K more, they will jump for the 1,000K more. That's the reality. Black folks don't really do that type of stuff. And a part of that is because once we get a job and we are comfortable in the job, we know what we do, we know what to expect. We ain't really trying to go out here again and polish up no resume and go and get some European shoes and a European suit or pantsuit for ladies or whatever, right? With a European or as you said, African facsimile of a European haircut. But that's all what the fade and all that shit is about, right? That's the shit that they told you you're allowed to wear. Right? And so most folks, if you notice, most black folks don't really move from job to job like that. Even in times when the conditions aren't great. Because you don't really feel to put yourself back to the bullshit again. But in a black world, you wouldn't have to do that. You wouldn't have to do that. KW-7 says the Catholic Church is being further exposed in their role in residential schooling system in which indigenous children were abused and assimilated into white culture. Absolutely. A brother from a bbtumi.com, one of the, I guess, associates of, the associates of Obadel Cambone sent me some books the other day. I can't remember if I put on the Discord or not, but you guys can look up in the BM library, the Bitter Medicine Library. It's about the Catholic Church's role in slavery and all that stuff. And I've read some papers that kind of touches on it, but I'll post that if I haven't already. And you'll see just how fucking ridiculous it is that we still follow that stuff. And the children and grandchildren of Catholicism, we still follow that stuff. Just like we follow the economic alternatives that white folks come up with, socialism, all this old bullshit. Stop it. Jerry Wallace says, great paper, family. Keep up the good work. Let the haters be your motivators. Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. KW-7 says the term limit for black people on a job for working on a white-owned and controlled is 5 years. Is that true? Is that the average amount of time a black person gets to work on a job? You know, my experience with them is you can do the job. They're going to keep you on that job because what happens is when you take a job, you get paid, right, according to the times that you took the job. And aside for, you know, a little incremental boost every year that they say is supposed to combat inflation, right? They'll add just like $100, you know, a few bucks every year, right? Because if this black person was to jump ship with frequency, right, they'll then have to start paying that position today's money. So say a black person took a job 20 years ago, they're still getting paid based on what they initially made 20 years ago, right? But if that guy was to quit today, that white owned business would have to pay that person today's money, which is going to be higher than it was, say, 20 years ago. So that's what I've noticed with them. They will keep you relatively comfortable, or in fact, you will keep yourself comfortable for the reason I just stated, right? And you'll stay on these jobs, right? But the reality of it is, their people jump from a job literally, especially over the last 20 years, you can see it. They will jump from a job every 5 months if another job is paying them just $1,000 more. But that's an interesting point that KW Don 7 made. The term limit for black people on a job working on a white-owned and controlled business is 5 years. That's crazy. That's crazy. Anyway, guys, that is the paper tonight. I'll be back on Thursday with another paper or something, or some kind of article to read. I hope this was insightful to all of you. It's time to stop making excuses for the Abrahamic religions. It's time. We've been following that shit so long now. If there was prosperity in it, we would be the most prosperous people on the planet. And don't tell me I have to die to see prosperity. Because I see folks living every day hoarding prosperity for themselves. I hope that was helpful to everyone. I want to thank KW Don 7 for being here, Jerry Wallace for being here, Black Excellence, Kevin Kare 42, Revolutionary Matron. Who else was here earlier? NYC Sports Archives, Black Excellence, NYC Beauties. Make sure you go and check out NYC Beauties Instagram as well as YouTube page. Sankofa Knowledge was here. Everyday NYC1 was here. I think I got everybody with that. I appreciate all of you for coming and spending time with me as we go through these papers. I know YouTube has been kind of messing with us, but so be it. The message will still get through. All right? Until next time, guys. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.